If you don't mind, let's take a break from the music right now, because I've got a story I'd like to tell. It was a beautiful morning at the Turnstile Farm with its red barns and white fences, deep in the heart of Kentucky bluegrass country. Everyone was excited, but the most excited was Mr. Honeycutt, the owner of the farm. You see, a new colt had just been born, and because his father was a famous Kentucky Derby winner, he was sure to be a great racehorse, and he needed a great name. So they named him Ulysses. Mr. Honeycutt and everyone at Turnstile Farm were very proud of Ulysses, and every day he and his trainers would go down to the stables to check on their prize colt. Now, horses usually grow very fast, and no one noticed for a while, but after a month or two had passed, everyone became concerned. Ulysses had not grown at all. It soon became obvious he never would. Needless to say, everyone was very disappointed, especially Mr. Honeycutt. After a while, no one paid much attention to the little colt. They more or less gave him the run of the farm. He was everyone's pet. He was very happy, very mischievous, very smart, and very useless. In fact, that became his new name. Instead of Ulysses, everyone called him Useless. He would never stay in his stall. He would climb under the door and go in and out as he pleased. He'd run and buck and do tricks that made everyone laugh. After all, what could you do but laugh at a racehorse that was less than 3 feet tall? It was fun for a while, until he became a little too mischievous and a little too smart. Strange things started happening at the Turnstile Farm, and no one could find an explanation. One morning when the trainers went down to the stables, some of the doors were wide open, and the horses were out of their stalls. As time went by, it happened more and more. This would not do. So one of the trainers came up with an idea. He would stay awake that night and keep watch, and find out why the stalls were open in the morning. That night, he hid in the shadows and waited. Then, around midnight, he saw something moving in the darkness. Then he heard a noise. He moved in closer to see what it was. He couldn't believe what he saw. Useless had learned to unlock the doors on the stalls by raising the bolts and pushing them back with his nose. Useless was the farm pet, but the farm pet had become the farm pest, and something had to be done. Mr. Honeycutt and the trainers got together to talk it over. They all loved Useless, but they made a decision. There was only one solution. Useless would have to go, but where? While reading the paper that evening, something caught Mr. Honeycutt's eye. The next week, a carnival was coming to town. Carnivals always have sideshows, and they just might be interested in Useless. After all, he was very unusual. So Mr. Honeycutt made up his mind that when the carnival came to town the next week, he would try to sell Useless. The very next night, while everyone was sleeping, a big storm came up with loud thunder and roaring winds. During the storm, a lightning bolt hit the stables and started a big fire. Mr. Honeycutt was awakened by the storm, and he looked out his window. Even over the trees, you could see the red glow of the flames from the stables. As everyone ran from the house, they could hear the horses. They sounded very frightened. So everyone thought that they were trapped in their stalls and they couldn't get out. When they reached the stables, the fire was so hot and the smoke was so thick they couldn't even get near the stalls. There was nothing they could do, and it seemed that all would be lost. Then all of a sudden, out of the smoke, all of the horses came running. And right in the middle of them all, kicking and bucking and making the most noise, was Useless. After the fire was out and things got back to normal, everyone sat around talking about how lucky it was that the horses had escaped. It was then that they realized what had happened. They remembered how Useless had opened the stalls with his nose a few nights before, and now he had done it again. Since that night, When anyone comes by the Turnstile Farm to see all the great racehorses, Mr. Honeycutt and the trainers never fail to take them by a small but very special stall. Over the door there's a plaque that reads, Ulysses, the little horse that didn't grow. And below that in small letters it says, some things come in small packages, and sometimes heroes do too.